Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome to my Tiny Talks podcast, the show where we'll dive into self-love, inner child healing, and discovering your soul's purpose. I look forward to chatting with you every single week and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's Tiny Talk. Oh, hello, you guys, and welcome to my 5th episode of Tiny Talks. I am beyond excited to be on here chatting with you all today. Today is going to be all about learning about our window of tolerance, what that means, what it means to be out of our window, inside our window, ways that we can expand our window of tolerance. And so basically to dive in, I have been a registered social worker for the past 4 years. And during this time, I have worked for several different agencies, done several different positions where I've learned an incredible amount about trauma in the brain and anxiety and depression and just how emotions can really fluctuate with our system. And so one of the biggest things that I learned in the beginning of my last position as a sexual assault healing coordinator was about a window of tolerance. And so this was a term that I had never heard before prior to beginning this position, and it's something that has literally transformed my life in the way that I look at my mental health and other folks' mental health. So basically your window of tolerance is a graphic that is used to explain how we're able to take on things going on in our day-to-day life. So basically, if you Google the graphic window of tolerance, you'll be able to see a physical copy of what this actually looks like. So it might make it easier while following along. But basically what it is we all have a window or a tolerance of space before things become too much. So if you think of like a temper, right? We have like a maximum before our temper blows up or until we ignite. And so what can happen is if we undergo something traumatic or stressful or hard, our window of tolerance actually becomes smaller, meaning that it's easier for us to be triggered and sent out of our window. And we can be sent out of our window in 2 different directions. So we can go up out of our window, which is called hyperarousal, and we can go out of our window below, which is called hypoarousal. So we'll start with hyperarousal. So basically what that means is I want you to think of you feeling like a volcano. You're about to explode. You got all this energy. You're angry. You're frustrated. Basically, this is your body's fight state. So we just got a lot of energy going on and cooped up in our body. And so we can go in the opposite, which is hypoarousal. So this is like your freeze response. You're feeling down. You're feeling numb, dissociating, just feeling really unregulated. And then in our window of tolerance, that's when we're feeling stable and grounded and in our body and present. And that is where we want to work to be as often as possible. And so with even just the circumstances of the world right now and our body being constantly on high alert. And so just to go in the brain a little bit, basically our brain and our body is always trying to protect us and to keep us safe. So we have something called an amygdala, which is in our brain. And basically what this amygdala is doing is constantly scanning our environment. It's looking for potential threats. And what it does is it uses our senses. So our sight, our hearing, our smell, our touch, and our taste. And so if your amygdala picks up that there's a potential threat or a potential danger, it's going to go off like an alarm, like a school bell, like a fire alarm, and basically send a message to your brain that there might potentially be a threat and we need to act. And so when this happens, your body starts to produce cortisol, which is your body's stress response hormone. And so when that happens, you might feel your heart beating faster, you might feel your palms getting sweaty, and you just start to feel really, really anxious and overwhelmed. And so when that happens, the front part of your brain actually goes offline. So your hippocampus kind of shuts off, which is your logical part of your brain. So when this happens, we're typically acting off of impulse. So if you can ever think of an experience where maybe, let's think of your house catching on fire and you're in your house. I've heard many stories of this happening to folks where they'll grab just random things like a toaster or a knife. And when they finally come to and calm down, they're telling themselves, why were these the first things that I grabbed? This doesn't make any sense. And because when we're in that state of thought or in that state of thinking, we're actually not thinking clearly and we're thinking out of impulse. And so coming back to the state of the world right now and with COVID and just everything going on, it can be really, really easy for us to be sent out of our window. And the unique thing about this, you guys, is we actually don't choose which direction we get sent out of our window. Sometimes we get sent into hyperarousal, sometimes we get sent into hypoarousal, the next time it can switch, and vice versa. So, basically, the reason that we want to be mindful of this is to always ask ourselves, where am I in my window right now? Am I feeling overly anxious? Am I feeling really down lately? Right? And so when we can start to pinpoint how we're feeling and how big our window of tolerance is, we can then start to incorporate things into our life that help us specifically. So if you can remember back a few moments ago when I was expressing about hyperarousal and all that energy that's in our body. So a huge thing that I can recommend if you are feeling super overwhelmed and like that volcano about to erupt and just, I don't know what to do, frustrated, I definitely encourage you to do something to physically get that energy out of your body. And so that could be going on a jog, that could be working out, that could be dancing, that could be literally screaming into a pillow, punching a pillow, right? Anything that we can do to get some of that energy out of our system. And so in the opposite, in hypoarousal, you can just imagine feeling low energy, not really having much there. So yoga is a great way just to get things flowing. Slow dancing is a great way to get energy flowing. It might be journaling to turn our brain back online. It could be using essential oils or sensory items, again, just to get our brain back online. And so one cool thing that I will just note about our senses is our nose, and our sense of smell is actually the first thing that we grab onto that brings us back online. So I personally love to have essential oils on me at all times. If I am feeling overwhelmed or I'm needing to just ground myself, smelling essential oils not only picks up a scent which brings you back to your body, but essential oils are actually acting at a higher frequency than we are, meaning that they actually help to up our vibration without us even really doing anything. And so the reason that I wanted to share about the window of tolerance today is because we're in a state of world where there is just increasingly a lot more stress, especially with COVID and it being something that we can't physically see. So therefore, our body's constantly looking for this threat, but it's something that we can't see. And so that's why I'm encouraging folks now more than ever to turn off the news, stop reading updates every second that you can get, turn off any notifications that you can on your phone, right? The less that we can consume our brain with all this toxic, overwhelming information, the more our body is able to be at a rest and digest state instead of acting out a state of impulse and fight or freeze, right? And so when that happens, our body's working a lot harder than it has to try to keep us safe in a situation that, again, we can't see and we don't have any physical control over, right? And so when that happens and our body's working harder than it has to, other parts of our system are actually going to start to shut down. And that's frequently why folks that have a lot of trauma typically have a lot of immune compromised conditions, have a lot of health conditions, and all those things, because our body is working so much harder to keep us safe all the time, especially in situations where we know that it doesn't have to. And the more that we can remind ourselves that we are safe, we're doing everything that we can, the world is taking steps to make it a safer place again, and just reminding ourselves of that to lower our system, lower our heart rate, and come back to our bodies is so, so, so important. So I definitely encourage you to Google the window of tolerance, do your own research on it, start to keep track, how am I feeling today, right? And then coming back to expanding that window. So that's a huge, huge thing, is actually expanding that window so that we have more resiliency between being able to take on things and being shot out of our window. So some great things there are just doing self-care practices, doing things that make you feel good, but on a regular basis, not waiting for your system to be overwhelmed to act on it. So that could be doing things that you love every single day. Maybe that is going to the gym. Maybe that's painting. Maybe that's going for a walk. Maybe that's decorating. Whatever it is that helps you feel in your body and to come back to your center is already going to expand that window in your resiliency to be able to take on things that are going on in your day-to-day life. I want to thank you guys so, so much for watching. I truly hope that this was helpful and maybe just helps you feel alone in that if you are bouncing back and forth between your emotions, that is just your body's way of protecting you. And the more that we can start to look at it from that perspective of our body's actually working with you instead of against you, it's all just about reshaping how we look at it and doing those things to look after ourselves each and every day. I want to thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to chat with you next week. Bye.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this week's episode of Tiny Talks. If you're looking to connect, you can find me on Instagram at JessieBrown13. I look forward to chatting with you all next week.